Welcome to Kvennaskólann í Reykjavík. My name is Þórður and with me today is my co-teacher Björk, and we're going to discuss our class here on gender studies. Just a few quick facts on the school. It's one of the oldest schools in Iceland. It was started in 1874, and this is the first school that gave education to women. And this is reflected in the name. Kvennaskólann translates to the women's school. So this is the women's school of Reykjavík. We're relatively big on Icelandic standards, so we have 611 students today. We bring you some good news and hopefully something that you find useful. First, the good news. There is a paradigm shift happening right now in our country, a paradigm shift towards gender studies in upper secondary schools. Now it's seen as not only beneficial, but a necessity. There are only 31 upper secondary schools here in Iceland, and as far as we know, 20 of them are teaching gender studies, and almost half of them have gender studies as a mandatory class for at least some of their students. This is an attitude that is light years away from the one that we encountered when we started teaching gender studies here in Kvennaskólann 10 years ago. And then it was met with either disdain, what are you thinking, why are you offering this class, this is all just a lot of rubbish, or with like mild curiosity, oh that's interesting. So in 2009, Björk and I decided to offer gender studies as an optional subject, hoping to get a little class, maybe 15 students, so the principal would allow us to teach the subject because we have to have like the lowest minimum amount of students. But we got a little bit more than 15. There were 95 students that applied for the course. So for the first semester we taught 3 different groups, and from then on this has been the most popular optional course in our school, and we've been teaching 3 to 5 groups each year. We have some pre-requirements for the students so they can take the class. They have to have some sort of background with working with social concepts, and they have to have some background in women's history, to know about the women's movements and so on. Our approach is, as you can see on the PowerPoint slide, intersectional, critical, self-critical, and we try to focus on solutions. By the end of the course, the students should have a more sophisticated knowledge on gender theories and their applications in the wider world, as well as better understanding of how these topics impact their own lives. This course is an introduction to the concepts and issues related to topics of gender and sexuality and their interrelatedness with other social systems. The aims of the course are to increase students' understandings of the complexity and interrelatedness of human behavior and the social systems humans produce as a result. The class is based on active participation of all students, so they can expect a steady diet of interactive discussions in class activities and written assignments. Students are expected to attend a few happenings outside of the school, and these are things like lectures at the university or elsewhere, some film screenings and stuff like that. The topics that we bring up in this course may cause a heated debate, and we do get some personal views from our students on various subjects. We make sure that all views are welcome, but we manage it to ensure that all voices are given an opportunity to be heard and not silenced, keeping in with a proper academic environment. However, all students in this course are also held responsible and accountable to themselves and to their classmates. We find that gender studies is a rather special subject for our students. We can of course only speak for ourselves and other teachers that we know that are teaching the subject. But our feeling is that gender studies, above other subjects, opens the eyes of the students to the inequalities that may shape their own lives. The course is empowering for students. It gives them both the tools to map out these inequalities and tools to tackle them. But that of course doesn't mean that they all go and do something about it. They're still teenagers.
My name is Björk, and I'm going to tell you about the themes that we work with in our gender study class. For the first 3 weeks or so, we go over some statistics, just the basic gendered facts, and also concepts that you have to know to be able to participate in discussion about gendered issues. These are all sorts of things, from gendered budgeting to concepts like rape culture, just so everyone will be on the same platform when we start getting into the more specific topics that we address in the course. When we started the course, we looked at our society and our culture. We have ranked very high in all sorts of gender equality lists, but there are some areas where we as a nation are lacking. So we decided to put our emphasis on these themes that we have listed here. Masculinity studies, and then we talk about queer studies. I work with queer studies with an emphasis on the limitation of the gender binary approach and the vast difference within the queer world. We also tackle pornification with a healthy dose of discussion of slut shaming. We also discuss mainstream porn and the stories porn tells us and from what viewpoint they are told. We have given trafficking a space in the syllabus as well. Last but not least, we try to enhance media literacy through a gender perspective well beyond the Bechdel test. So, how do we know that we are having a positive impact on our students? First of all, we can see how our students change the way they speak about certain topics regarding equality. Secondly, our students get a written assignment where they are supposed to evaluate on the course in the end of the semester. Thirdly, the school has an anonymous evaluation where the students can write freely about what they think. And at last, we got a PhD student in gender studies to conduct focus groups with our former students in 2014. So, let's look at some of the things the students said. Now, all the equality light bulbs have been lit in my head. This course really seems to change their perspective on the world. They do complain that they see the world as a darker, more unjust place, but they are also glad to be aware and glad to know about the people and institutions that are trying to battle this injustice. A few have found their way into gender studies at the university. Some of the students go into feminist activism, but most do now not. Many of them go into some sort of social activism. All of them talk about how they act out more if they encounter injustice in their surroundings. Even many years after graduation, students keep contacting us with, do you know what I saw? Do you know what I read? Or do you know what I heard? And they send us examples, pictures, and so on, that they think that we could use in class. And they send us materials from all over the world, where they are studying or traveling. They spread the message. I've talked so much about the course with my friends that they almost know as much as I do. Hopefully, they keep the facts straight, but it's not only their friends. Their families get an education as well. This course has ruined every family gathering I've gone to for the last couple of months.
Here we get some mixed messages. Each and every student writes, why isn't this mandatory? And they like to see the subject as mandatory for every student, and most of them think that this should be in our first year. Although when we discuss it further with the students, they tend to agree that they probably wouldn't have listened to anything that we have to say on these subjects when they were 16. On the other hand, some of them, and this was very prominent in the focus groups, they wanted for the material to go further and deeper and have more theory and brought more into the gray areas. They basically want a university level approach to gender studies. For us, the teachers, we're a bit reluctant. Making the class mandatory might take the bite out of it. We have some introduction to gender studies in a first year class that is mandatory, and it's always debatable how much we should have in that introduction. We have tried to involve our gender studies students in a way that they do an assignment where they make some material, some teaching material or assignments for our younger students. We're also hesitant that by making it mandatory, that could mean that some poor teacher that has no interest in gender studies and no background in gender studies will have to teach this subject. If we do make it mandatory, there are a few things that we have to have in mind. Firstly, we need better teaching material. Right now, there are none whatsoever. And then secondly, there's the need for more teacher training. There are some teachers that have gotten some basic training, but most of them have no real background in gender studies. And that is something that we can't have if we're supposed to teach this in every school, mandatory. Good intentions just aren't enough. We see some side effects seep into our school culture after we began having gender studies here in the school. Just a couple of years after we introduced the gender studies class in this school, we saw the emergence of a student equality board where the students with a few faculty members plan some activities that get all the student body involved in equality issues. They, for example, plan a special equality week every year where they get lectures or some activities, musical numbers, stand-up comedians, something like that during the whole week that gets all the student body thinking about and participating in the fight for a more equal society. We also see the same group get involved in planning lunch break lectures, where they get some interesting lecturers from the university or somewhere in activism in Iceland, and they come here during the lunch break and talk about what they've been researching or doing. And this is something that is always very well sought out by the students. Also, we see the emergence of student equality groups. We have the Feminist Association of our school, and then we have the LGBTQI plus group. Both groups are prominent in making the voices of these students heard, and they reflect on changes that they see are needed in the school environment. So we see this having an impact on both the student body. They're much more aware about gender equality and equality as a whole in the school and outside of the school. We also see it within the faculty itself. The teachers here and other people that work here are much more involved in making this a more equal place to work and study. An example about how we see these little things have an effect is that 2 years ago during Valentine's Day on February 14th, a celebration of romantic relationships, which is normally very heteronormative, a few students decided to hang up posters like this with the tag that said "Love is for everybody" and "Love is all kinds." And there were like 6 different couples of different races, different gender, different orientations and disability status. And this is something that the whole school saw, and nobody did anything to the posters. They were not written down like most of the things that students put up on the walls here. So 4 months later, we still have this hanging up around the school. So it's the little things that have an effect on our students and our school. I hope you found some of the stuff that we talked about here interesting. This is the end for us. Thank you for listening.
Good luck.
Takk fyrir.
Takk fyrir.